reconciling ourselves as a whole person. There's not some fragmented piece that's locked up down in the basement that you never go down and get because it's too painful to engage. This piece of us that we don't want anybody to know, that we always put on the mask. When we can take that piece and add that back into our experience and say, that's part of who I am, and move beyond it, that's freedom.
This is the Untamed Podcast, where only the few dare to go. We're building a community of adventurous high achievers who refuse to trade our dreams for comfortable mediocrity so that we can unleash our untamed potential. Could you be one of the untamed few? Now, your untamed hosts, Mark Lucas and Joel Fritz.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back.
Hey, the few.
It's so good. We're in Huntsville, Alabama. My son and I actually cruised up yesterday. Here we are recording some new episodes.
Sitting in my house that my wife worked so hard with me to clean.
It looks fantastic. This setting is amazing.
We made some pizza last night.
Just glad to be back. Pizza was amazing. So today we jump into a conversation that really we've been talking about for quite some time, actually. And it's about take off the mask that you've been wearing for quite some time. And really kind of diving into this conversation around the mask and these masks that you and I and men with us today that we wear.
It's a very common thing. Everybody is wearing a mask in some form, but we need to be men that learn how to remove the mask.
Take it off.
Yeah, because we want to be men who are real whole and complete. We experience that contentment that comes with being content with who we are. Experiencing that peace, that joy that comes. So that's what we're really looking for. But in order to get there, we have to remove that mask. We have to be the whole person that we're created to be.
Yeah. And really in that, there's obviously some things we're going to talk about. There's a story that you have as well. We're going to jump into here in a second. But like you said, it's this process of what does it look like for us to just be true to who we are, to truly just unmask ourselves and be authentic and true and whole to who we are.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited because I know for me in the journey, there's been a process for me in identifying some of those masks. Masks that I didn't even know I was necessarily wearing. And today we get to really ask men to go into a place of being sober-minded and say, okay, what are those masks that you're wearing?
Right.
How do we take them off? Here are the benefits of taking them off. Here's some action steps that we're going to give you. So again, we want to encourage you men that are with us right now watching this, stay with us to the end. Because we're going to tackle all those things. And it's important. I know in YouTube, they say for most videos, the average watch time is like 5 to 8 minutes. Stay with us to the end. We're going to wrap it up about 25 to 30 minutes. And it's important that they understand the why and then the action steps of how they will actually take off their mask.
And that's what we are all about, informing Untamed and asking men to come on this journey with us, is that we want to be unmasked, untamed, walking fully released into our untamed potential.
And I love that untamed potential too.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into this, man. I've been dying to tell this story. It's so interesting to me, and it has to do directly with masks, right? I had this experience some time ago, an interaction with an individual who's a successful individual. I think when we think of successful people, oftentimes we think of doctors, right? And
doctor.
This guy's a doctor. A physician, a successful physician, but in conversation, he would share that he would be sick every day before he'd go to work. And I think sometimes it just like, when you experience that about somebody else, there can almost be like this short circuit moment that you look at another human being and you go, you? What?
You're a doctor.
What? Yeah, I mean, how could you be discontent to that degree that you're
the alpha
sick?
Male?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, there was that thought, but hearing that just made me think so much of it. And I think all of us have these moments where we're uncomfortable with what we're doing. But to hear somebody like that say, I'm sick every day before I go to work, and then to kind of play that out in your mind, I start thinking, how? Why? Why would that happen? And there's a lot of nuances that we can get into in this, and I think that's important to point out just a little bit for a second. And that is that it is good for us to get into uncomfortable situations. I mean, if we want to be untamed, we have to leave comfort behind. We've talked a lot about comfort. So that's not what we're talking about right now. What I am talking about is this idea that you could be doing the same thing again and again and again, but you are sick. You actually have anxiety that is coming out in a physical way before you do something, and you continue to do it.
Right.
And the question is why? Yeah. Why is it? And there's this image that you and I have been sharing with each other. And I almost feel like it's just going to come out all over the place throughout this untaming journey that we are going to be on with men, that so many men are actually already joining in to be a part of, and is very exciting for us. But as we do this, there's this image, and it's a bird cage. It's a bird cage with the cage door open, but the bird is sitting inside. Yeah. And it's so powerful. It makes you think, like, why is the bird inside the cage, even though the door to the cage is open? Right. But what a visual metaphor for what we're talking about right now. You know, my friend who would continue to go into the same situation, really kind of a caged, trapped situation, but do it again and again and again, even though it was making them sick. Yeah. And the reason I bring it up is because he's not alone.
He's not.
You've experienced it. I've experienced it. I think just about everybody that we are here with right now has experienced it in some way. Yeah. The question is why? Why do we continue to do it? Why do we continue to put on the mask and act a certain way when we go to work, even though we felt those things before we went in?
Yeah. Well, and I'll just go back quickly, because we've talked a lot about that bird. And I think at the end of the day, what we're getting at today in that bird is that bird doesn't have clipped wings. And yet that bird, in the mindset of that bird, there's a clipped wing on each side of that bird. And yet that bird maybe hasn't experienced the beauty of flying and freedom and peace and wholeness and contentment and all those beautiful things that really embody what it is to be untamed. That bird is clipped and tamed. Yeah. And in that story, that's exactly right. That highly successful doctor is exactly the embodiment of that bird that has the clipped wings, but doesn't actually have clipped wings. But in his mindset, he does. And he's walking through this Groundhog Day. Every single day, he's living in misery, and he's completely caged, doing the same thing every single day.
But he's able to do something about it. And that's what we want men to hear.
Right.
We want men to hear that there is something that you can do about it.
And we're going to walk him out of the cage.
And we want to make sure that they understand that the door is open and that they can walk right out.
Yeah. And I think some of the process of walking out, there's multiple ways to walk out of the cage. But I'm going to get at right now, I think one of the predominant ways for myself that I walked out of that cage at 24.
Yeah.
So at 24, a lot of us back, 25 years ago, began to read John Eldredge content.
Loved it. Heart. Yep. Loved his
phenomenal book that myself and many other men have really been impacted by. Right. And there was this chapter, I remember the chapter 6, and it was called The Wound.
Yeah.
And in this chapter, John Eldredge makes this great point that there is a wounding that has happened. And he even goes on to say, and I love this visual because, again, we're in a visual place right now with that bird. There's this piercing of the heart that has been pierced by an arrow.
Oh, yeah.
And the arrow has inflicted the inner part, the core, the soul, or the very inner being of who we are in our hearts. And that wound has been inflicted, whether it's a family of origin wound,
right?
Whether it's a wound from somebody that's really close to us.
It comes from all sorts of places.
All sorts of places.
Usually, often from those closest to us, but
normally,
all sorts of places.
And often, correct. And for me, and that's what John Eldredge would suggest, is that there was a wounding that came from your father. So I remember reading this chapter, and I remember, again, chapter 6, and I remember, Joel, the first time I read it, I read the chapter, and then the challenge, the go and do, the integration at the end was to identify that wound from your earthly father. Yeah. And I remember reading it, and I remember like throwing down the book and thinking to myself, there's no way. Honestly, there's no way. I had a great dad, and there's just no way that I can even identify or come to a place that my dad wounded me. And as I began to kind of wrestle with that, the reality is that unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, but normally unintentionally, we've been wounded by the people that have been the closest to us.
Of course.
And my dad didn't do it intentionally. Yeah. So I began to process that, what that wound is for my father, and I'll actually share just briefly what that wound was. My dad and I both have a very, very competitive nature. And in that competitive nature, what would happen is that I played high-level soccer for about 22 years of my life. Played at the highest level even in college.
What don't you play, Mark? I mean.
As I played soccer at a high level, I remember about the age of my son right now, when I would drive home and my dad and I would process the game. Mm-hmm. It was always him and I, and we'd process the game. And what would happen, Joel, is that he would walk me through the highlight reel, but it wasn't a highlight reel. He would walk me through the reel of the mistakes that I made.
Right.
And that's even, I catch myself. I have a tendency to also do that with my son right now.
You're already breaking my heart as I think about the way
right.
I interact
and
with
I think
kids.
Just as men with our competitive nature,
of course,
we have this desire to want to improve, to want to grow, to want to become better, and even the best at what we're doing.
Right.
And that's this model that we have for being successful. And yet, what I heard, because he would encourage as well, but what I really resonated with those arrows that were piercing my heart is I began to develop this high perfectionism where I had a hard time looking in the mirror and accepting that I did anything well.
Right.
Because I would constantly find and pick apart the things that I didn't do well.
Right.
And that had a wounding in me.
Yes.
That had this high perfectionism, which actually led to a little bit of anger struggles. So I think for men, you've got to start to really begin to take off the mask and identify what that wound is, because perfectionism, anger, addiction, there's some predominant vices that happen and tendencies that will happen if we allow that wound to fester and to really manifest itself within our hearts. So when I process that with actually my father, when he was still alive, and he's not with us anymore today, but when he was alive, I'm so thankful that I was able to have that conversation with my dad, because what it did is it actually broke the cycle that was a generational cycle that happened from his dad and his great-grandfather. There was this generational cycle of men with their boys, their sons, being harsh and critical, and there was this critical spirit.
Right.
And that became kind of the predominant voice that we would communicate in these type of sport moments, or business, or education, or whatever it might be. And once I processed with my dad, there was this beautiful freedom, that experience for my dad and I both. My dad didn't realize he was doing it. And when I shared it with my dad with great grace and love, it allowed me to begin, like I said 25 years ago, to begin to walk out of that cage.
Right.
And to begin to experience some of this beautiful wholeness and peace and contentment. That is so absolutely beautiful. And now, still to this day, my son Carson, when I catch myself in these moments, he asked me to evaluate him after a hockey game. And there's so many things now because of this wound moment that I just don't go straight to the critical and straight to the evaluation mode. I continually affirm and encourage the wins first. And then as he continues to ask, then I'll kind of break it into some more things. So again, there's some beauty in that, to be able to have that conversation.
There really is, Mark. And I appreciate you, the way that you shared that, I think is really going to help men to look at their own lives and to ask that sort of a question. But what is key is that they ask it to begin with. They ask, where did the wound come from? Because something has happened in their lives. So when they evaluate, they can recognize that many things, oftentimes, what they're dealing with is not necessarily originating with them. That there was some sort of an outside force, some experience that they had that created a wound, and now they do need to deal with it and process it, because it is a part of their life in some way. And if I think about the way that we handle things in life, people just in general, we're always avoiding the things that are hard to deal with. If there's pain, we avoid it. And there's so many different things I can think about. It's almost like I have to stay on track. But we have to deal with that, man. We have to go right headlong into dealing with the wound in our lives. And so you illustrating that allows us to see we have a wound and be okay with stepping out. And even though you're saying that could be, I almost felt like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but felt like you had a little apprehension to go and ascribe that to your father, that he may have had a part in some sort of difficulty in your life. But you said you addressed that by going to him respectfully with love, and you brought it up, and you were able to find healing, and it sounds like he dealt with it pretty well. Did he deal with it well from his side?
He handled it so well.
That's awesome.
And I think the apprehension for me real quick was just that there's really so much, the magnitude of greatness with my dad. It was hard for me to even pinpoint the wound.
Got it.
Because there was such an outpouring of unconditional love and grace and truth that was manifested in our home.
And what's interesting is you were willing to share your example. And like you said, you had a great dad. Some people listening did not have a great dad. Yeah. And we're not just isolating this to fathers. We're just using these two examples. Like it could be your family of origin. It could be somebody who's close to you. It could be somebody in one or two of those rings, a little bit outside of the center ring and concentric circles.
I've heard coaches even.
Exactly. Yep. But people who are close to you. Yep. But I have this other amazing father story, a really close friend of mine. And he's been through the entire journey. So it's so exciting to tell that. And I won't give all the details. I would really hope that we'd be able to interview him one day. But he had a situation where his father was in jail. And he actually needed an adopted mother, a mother to adopt him, walked with him in life, to care for him. But as an adult, he went and sought his father out. And he found him in a jail. And he got to know his dad, even though his dad had created that level of wound, that he had abandoned him, that he had to find somebody else to care for him, that he had done so many things in his life that he found himself in a jail. This son went and sought out his father. But the incredible thing is he didn't go and just vent on him. He didn't just lay it all out for him. He went and he forgave him. And that's such an incredible step for anybody to take, because if you think about the difference, I think we're trained to, again, resist that pain, to push that pain away. But to actually go and engage the pain and then forgive the person who inflicted the wound upon you, that's beyond. I mean, that's a spiritual experience. That's a transformational thing, something that almost like we don't have the ability to do in and of ourselves as humans, because we're moving beyond the human nature. We're moving beyond our guttural response and our reaction that any human being rightfully should do. Going on to forgive another human being and move past that. And when he tells a story, it's so powerful because he talks about how he had chains around him until that day that he went and forgave his father. And the chains were broken and they fell off. And the result wasn't more pain. The result was freedom. The result was liberation. The result was that he reconciled himself. And we've talked a little bit about that, reconciling ourselves as a whole person. There's not some fragmented piece that's locked up down in the basement that you never go down and get because it's too painful to engage. This piece of us that we don't want anybody to know, that we always put on the mask. When we can take that piece and add that back into our experience and say, that's part of who I am, and move beyond it, that's freedom. So you want to talk about peace? You want to talk about joy? That, being able to say, that happened, and I'm okay.
Well, and just to know the power of forgiveness, to know the power of the manifestation of true love that he experienced, to know that he set himself free from that birdcage. There is so much beauty in that story, and he did the hard things, but it was so absolutely worth it.
And
so worth it
to be. I have to say, because you said that he set himself free, and there is never a moment when he would allow anybody to ever say that. And I have to say, you would say, Jesus set him free.
Yes.
But we want to make sure that we engage not just that step, but that we help men think about identifying the fact that they're wearing a mask,
right?
Because they have a wound,
yes,
and they need to do something about it.
Yeah, and my reference to he was that he took the action.
I totally agree.
To allow Jesus to set him free.
I just thinking of this guy.
He's like, if he hears
he's not
this,
here, the person but he's going to hear me. He's going to be like, you know my story.
Soul.
You can't ever share my story again unless you share it with full integrity. Yeah.
Well, and again, we want, and we already have a beautiful audience that's with us. And again, we have people that are in all journeys of faith. We have some people that are not right now walking in faith, and you're in this journey with us, and we are so glad that you're in this journey with us.
100%.
But I want to address, you said Jesus, and I want to address one thing before we begin to kind of process the integration and the action steps.
Good.
I think there's this beautiful picture that we get in the creation accounts that in the creation, in the beginning of Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
when God can look down upon Adam and Eve and say they were naked and felt no shame.
Yeah.
And
No masks. No, nothing.
No masks.
No
and
leaves.
That naked, again, we're husbands, so we think naked. That naked is so much more than just the literal naked.
Right.
It is no mask. It's this translucence is what I would say. Yeah. It's this complete vulnerability. As Brené Brown would say, vulnerability is the birthplace of love.
And look at how well she has done just emphasizing vulnerability.
100%.
Man, that's not just a woman thing. That's not just a man thing. That is a human being thing. That we can get out and be vulnerable and just say, this is who I am. This is what has happened. This is my experience. And I'm going to embrace that. I don't care what you think. I have to be myself. It's more important for me to be me than it is for me to placate whatever it is you feel about me.
Right. So I think that's the encouragement for all men with us right now is that what steps do you need to take right now to be able to get to a place, and even if you're 1% more at this place today, that says, I can actually be at a place where I feel like I can be completely open and feel no shame.
There you go.
And have no mask on with this good friend of mine that I've identified as a bro that I want to do deeper life with.
Your few. Who are those few?
Right. You know? And we even talked about in a video we recorded yesterday that this is a person that I want more meaty conversations with.
That's right.
Okay. This is a person that I can have that dialogue with, a mutual exchange of conversation, and I can know that there is more substance, and with that creates more connection, and with that removes the isolation that we feel. So there's so many wins and so many benefits, even to the point of being able to say, we're not asking that you take off the mask and it's got to be a communication that's a negative communication. We want men, and we're calling men to take off the mask and to begin to share a dream.
That's right.
Take off a mask and begin to share great wins with other men.
Right.
There's great positive things also that we need to take our mask off and share with these men.
But we're depriving ourselves when we don't do that, which is one of the biggest reasons that at the core of what we're going to do with Untamed as we build everything out are going to be groups of men, the few. Because we want to help men find their few. Because without it, we are not able to express ourselves fully. We are not able to see the blind spots that we have. We're not able to take the mask off and begin the process of practicing wholeness and reconciling ourselves as one individual with multiple experiences. And all of those things are so important, but we have to find our few to do it. So that would be part of the steps, but what first and foremost, we want men to become aware of the fact today that they're wearing a mask in some areas. So they've got to leave this podcast and they've got to ask themselves,
step one,
what's my mask? Right? What's my mask? And oftentimes we've got multiple masks that we're wearing.
I know I've worn multiple masks at times.
So if we're wearing multiple masks, that's okay. We're saying everybody is wearing some sort of a mask. So what are you going to do to identify the mask that you are wearing? And we think it's easy that you just step away and you make some space to just be able to ask the question. And if guys will do that, they can take a step forward. And then 2 has a little bit more to do with like finding somebody and actually trying to remove the mask with an individual, right?
Yeah, and I think it's having that courage to be courageous to have that conversation where as you take off that mask, you have a conversation, and it's a conversation that's more meaty, a conversation that's more meaningful, with more substance, to be able to express and some openness of vulnerability with another individual that you've identified. Hey, this bro is on my life team. Like, this is a guy that's in the Untamed few. This is a guy that I want to go deeper with and have more meaningful conversations with.
No
and
doubt.
I think that's the second point. Quickly, just one thought came into mind that we didn't talk about, but I love this movie so much and I have to share it within a minute and a half. In the movie 300, one of the greatest movies, in my opinion, possibly ever. Definitely in my top 5. When they train the Spartans to fight, as they train these boys, they cherry pick them out between 10 and 12 years old. One of the first training things they do is they partner them up with another boy, and they train them that this is absolutely your partner that is going to be positioned right here off your side to be able to protect you from your blind spots, to be able to see the weakest points in your armor, to be able to know where your Achilles heel is, and to be able to stand with you in this beautiful battle that we fight together as men. And we are never, ever called to do life alone.
Right.
We have to identify who is that Spartan brother that's in the untamed few that's going to go into battle with us.
Absolutely.
So that just came to mind. I'm like, you know what? That's one of the most beautiful things. Even when you look at the armor of God, you have to also identify who is that guy that's going to go and do battle side by side with you.
Right.
So
yeah, no doubt.
Third action step, or
the third action step is that we begin to walk in it, right? So once we remove the mask, we are actually beginning to embrace that as a part of our life, recognizing that, hey, whatever this wound is, wherever it came from, that's a part of who we are, and that's why I love my buddy's example, is that he walked that out.
Yeah.
He didn't reject and say, that father of mine, he's in a jail somewhere and he did this to me, and he had every right to. But instead he moved past that and he decided to forgive. And when he forgave, he didn't experience more pain. He experienced the freedom and the wholeness that we all want. Yeah. And that's what we want for men. Untamed, the very name of what we're doing, Mark, the very hope that we have for every dude listening. Every person that we can potentially come in contact with in the next years, that they would become untamed and release that untamed potential that sits there, that latent energy and that potential energy that just needs to be released into that kinetic energy that just kind of explodes out onto everything, onto the world. And that is how you become a world changer. But before you can do that, you have to be reconciled with yourself. You have to be wholly you. That's where your essence is going to come out, and you can step into your calling and onto your path of purpose with courage, with passion. And so that's what we're excited about. But that's step 3, is that once you remove the mask, that you own it, and it becomes a part of you that you become wholly yourself.
The last thing I'll say, and then I'm really stoked for this conversation, is that men need to know that this is not an easy conversation that we're having with you.
Yep.
This is really a conversation about doing hard things. Mm-hmm. But I hope within your heart, as you hear and resonate with these words, and you resonate with the steps that we've asked you to take, it is so worth it to take the few steps from the perch with the bird cage open.
That's right.
To be able to take the steps to get out of that cage. Those are hard steps.
Yeah.
These are hard things that we're asking men to do. But
there's some easy steps.
It's so worth it, though.
It's so worth it.
There's some easy steps, but these are hard steps. But here's the thing.
Yes. I totally blew your point right there.
No.
You were so good.
To go from good to great, or to become great at whatever you want to do, it requires effort and sacrifice.
Yeah.
Nothing comes easy that's worth it.
Right.
So this is a step that requires some work.
Yep.
But
it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
To experience the peace and the wholeness and the freedom and the contentment.
Yeah.
To be truly comfortable with who you are and your identity, and not have to feel like you're fragmented and you're beginning to take masks off. And now you can have genuine, authentic friendships.
It's like I want to look at the camera and just say, who wants that? And everybody wants it.
We all do.
Everybody wants it. And that's so powerful.
Take that step with us.
Yeah. And we hope, we want, we ask. But the first steps are easy, because people are going to go, well, where can I go from here? And that is the easy step. You and I have talked about it again and again. There are easy front end steps that you can take, because one of the most important things is that you take some step. You leave here today and you don't do nothing, because when we do nothing, we just stay in the same exact spot. We continue to wear the mask. We continue to have the sick stomach before we go to work.
It's Groundhog Day.
You got it.
Same day, every day.
So we're asking you to take a step today. If it's as easy as joining the Facebook group, go right ahead. We've made that part easy. The rest is going to be more difficult, like Mark said, but it's worth it.
It's so worth it.
We hope, men, we hope you come on the journey with us. We've got a lot of good. We want to be able to be a part of your life, and seeing you go through these untamings, that your life can really live into your full potential. You can find that contentment, that peace, that joy, and be able to express yourself fully. That's a real desire of ours.
Thank you, Untamed Few.
Yeah.
See you soon.
If this episode sparked something in you, please subscribe and even share it with someone who's ready to take their life to the next level. We're always on the hunt for men who are looking to become untamed and release their untamed potential. Also, if you found value in this conversation, then please rate the podcast and leave a comment. It makes a huge impact in building our community. We'll see you next time when the adventure continues, or maybe when yours begins.